Welcome to the Vetiver Vibes podcast. We're your hosts, Nikki, Fraser, and Rachael Dean, certified clinical aromatherapists. We are excited to have you here on today's episode where you know that you'll get the best essential oil scoop.
This episode is brought to you by Essentria, a leading online school for aromatherapy. If you want to learn more about aromatherapy with kids, check out the courses at www.schoolofessentria.com. Welcome to this week's episode of Vetiver Vibes. Nikki Fraser here with Rachael Dean.
Hi.
And we are part 2 of our safety dilution series. And today we're going to be talking about dermal dilution by age.
By age, because the essential oils you need to use on a baby could be 0, but can change drastically between if you're a baby through to an adult, through to an elderly, and then everything in between. So depending on kind of what your health status is, etc. So typically when we're chatting, I think we said in the last episode that we're talking about just a standard healthy adult. So those are our normal blend ratios and stuff. So this one here is another chart I can kind of show here a little bit, but it kind of goes over babies 0 to 3 months, babies 3 to 24 months, young children, which is like 2 to 6 years, and then children to young adults, which is 6 to 16 years, and then adults, which is 16 plus years. And the range of that changes drastically. So it kind of goes from 0.1% all the way up to 5% on this particular chart. And the difference of that is based just on kind of where people are at. And as we said before, we want to start low and then you can slowly increase. And sometimes you don't actually need essential oils. So
yes, that's something that we remind people all the time. We do get the question a lot of, I have a baby at home. I just had a baby. My baby's 3 months old, 6 months old, 1 year old. How much can I use? And one, like you said, Rachael, health is always so. We don't typically, like you said, talk about healthy adults. These are healthy children. It's not compromised health children either, healthy children, but their lungs are still developing. Their organs are still developing, their skin, their senses, and they can get overstimulated very, very quickly. And on top of that, especially when we're talking about babies need to smell parents. This is important for bonding. This is important for nurturing that growth and bonding experience between babies and parents, which is a lot of times why we say, don't diffuse around little ones, especially for birthing, different things like that. But we want as much natural scent as possible between babies and parents. So if you can avoid essential oils and just use carrier oils or hydrolats, even better. But if you always outweighing the risk, where I've definitely used essential oils when my babies were babies at just a few weeks old, because the diaper rash was atrocious. They didn't fit into we use cloth diapers and they didn't fit into their cloth bums yet. They were too tiny. My second was too tiny, so we had to use disposables for those first couple weeks. And for my oldest too, but my oldest I wasn't aware of essential oils yet, but my second I was, and it was like blister upon blister on his poor bum. And I was heartbroken as a parent trying to figure out how to help, and outweighing the risk of something over the counter that I wasn't comfortable putting on their body because it had carcinogenics, all kinds of other products that I wasn't comfortable putting on his skin, or a blend of coconut oil and, 1 drop properly diluted of Roman chamomile or 1 drop properly diluted of lavender. To me, it was a no-brainer that that's what I would use. And that's where you need to take that risk benefit analysis of yourself of what you're comfortable. But this is why it's important to properly dilute. So if you haven't listened to our part 1, where we talked about dilution, how to dilute appropriately, this is where micro dilution comes in. This is why we have that micro dilution chart, is because of babies and young children that we need to properly dilute in those micro amounts.
And one thing to add to this as well is, just because you have an essential oil and just because you can dilute the essential oil to like what we're saying right now is the basic overall required percentages for safety, that doesn't mean you should ever actually use that essential oil. It still depends on what are the safety outlines of that specific oil. So like you would never use clove on most people kind of thing. But for babies, typically the only two oils that I think either of us would typically use is lavender and Roman chamomile. There will be other ones that are potentially out there that we would use, but those are like two of the simplest, gentlest essential oils that you could use with babies. So,
Mhm.
but I wouldn't use citrus on a baby. I wouldn't use lots of other oils.
No,
Like
not when applying
not when they're tiny.
topically,
No,
and
exactly.
especially clove, and I'm so happy you brought that up because it honestly, it breaks my heart the amount of posts I see of teething babies, and I see parents
Yes,
putting
of course.
clove on their jaws, which when they're then eating it, which is so, so dangerous, at that age, especially because they can't voice how it does hurt and will burn them,
Hmm.
or even on the jaw, which at least it's slightly better, but clove should please don't use clove on your babies while teething.
No,
Please,
but
please,
you
please
could use
don't.
lavender. Lavender can
Yes.
help with pain. So can Roman chamomile. And if you feel like that is something that could that you were dealing with and you wanted to try, as long as you
Yeah.
dilute it to those lower, very low
Yeah,
doses.
or even
Um,
frankincense,
yep.
and we're rubbing our jaw. So those who are
Yes.
watching on YouTube, we're rubbing our jaw. Please don't put it on the gums. Apply it on the jawline. So wherever the tooth is coming through, put it on that area along the jawline, and that is going to be more beneficial than putting it on the gums. Please don't put it there. I can't stress it enough. But that's where is, that risk benefit analysis of what you're going to do. But for babies, it's that zero. And so babies that 0 to 3 months, 0.1 to 0.2%. So not even a full percent, like 0.1%. This is why we get into that micro dilution. So it really, really doesn't take a whole lot. And to get a full drop of that, you need to make 60 milliliters of a blend
Hmm.
to get a zero point 0.1 dilution. And that's one drop in 60 milliliters. So you really, really don't need a lot at those infant ages.
Yeah, exactly. The percentages then slightly increase as people get older, the babies get older and they turn into young children. But even then, like at 2 to 6 years, you're still only using 1 to 2% at the most, and you can use less. So you could also just
Hmm.
use the carrier oils. You can just use hydrolats. There's lots of other options. And you can try if the 0.5%, and if that works for whatever it is that your child needs, great, use that. There's no reason that you
Hmm.
have to use the 1%. That's a guideline. All of these are guidelines. This is just, but you can always use less, but don't use more.
Yeah. And the thing I like to point out on this chart too is that so for babies, it says 3 to 24 months. So the second age group of babies, 3 to 24 months, and then young children is 2 to 6 years. So you have 2 years technically in both because 24 months is 2 years. So, and we often will see people with 2-year-olds making that 2% blend. So remember, there's a huge difference between 2 and 6 years of age. Like that child
Exactly.
will triple in size and be able to handle a lot more at 6 versus 2 for anything life in general. But even essential oils, right? Keeping it down. My kids are 11 and 9. I will still often only do a 0.5% blend for them if I need to make anything, depending on what it is. So, like you said, Rachel, you can always go down. But at that 2 years, I typically go with the lower, always at
Mhm.
the lower, because again, that's at the bottom of young children. You're at the bottom of the age. So I always start at the lowest amount possible.
Yeah. Um, and then as you become a, healthy adult, you can go up to the 2 to 5%. But
Mhm.
as we've already been saying too, you could also use 1% and see if the blend works for you. And the next episode we're going to talk about is kind of where you're using them on your body and why that might change what
Mhm.
percentage you can use in different areas. So please stay tuned for that because that's also very important. But if you're using them in a very sensitive area, such as your face or um, mostly, I guess your face is the really most
Mhm.
sensitive area. Don't use the higher percentages there. The maximum for your face is 1.5%, but you also want to use much less. The skin on your face is significantly more sensitive. I personally have rosacea, as I've mentioned before in the podcast, and so if I was to use anything higher, like it would just make that very upsetting for my skin. Whereas I could use essential oils and at a lower dose, and it could calm my face, right? So, you don't want to sensitize yourself or trigger issues either.
Yeah, and you don't want to use them too much throughout the day. Like, not every product that you use needs to have essential oils because then again, you're inundating the body with oils all day long, which can then have the opposite effect of what we need. Instead of calming, it can actually dysregulate our autonomic nervous system, which is what we are not wanting to do. Typically,
Of
we're using
course.
it to help regulate and strengthen that parasympathetic system. So this is why if you're using it, only use it when needed. The other thing, this dermal dilution by age, it really focuses on children, but there are elderly too. And so elderly, and I really don't like saying elderly, think of them as children because that's not at all what it is. But when we're looking at essential oil use, it's that again, that lower dilution, that 0.5% is going to often be great. And by elderly, I mean frail. Okay, just because someone is, to me,
I
60
was
is
just
not
gonna say.
elderly. Also,
Also, but like it could be,
um,
it's yeah, the frail. I think it's like if you're grabbing someone's hand and you can tell that the skin is very thin
mhm,
as it ages, right? You know, I might get in
yes,
trouble for talking about, but both my parents, they are technically elderly, seniors, what have you, but neither of them have frail skin at all. Like they would 100% use the same blends I would use still.
yeah,
They're both in great condition that way. Um, but I know lots of other people who are the same age as them, and their skin is very frail and like thin, and you know, um, if they get a wound, it might not heal as easily,
yeah.
things like that. So that's kind of what we mean by elderly.
Yeah, and that's where, hydrolats are great, and especially if they are on any kind of oxygen, then you don't want to use essential oils either. You want to stick with the hydrolats if they are on oxygen, just because we want to avoid anything that could be flammable, or anything like that around it. So it's always just better to err on the side of caution when people are on oxygen and only use the hydrolats. Even at that, a lot of times too, using them aromatically is another great option. I know we're talking about dilution, so when we're really focusing on applying it topically, but aromatically, a lot of times that will have just as many benefits as applying them topically. And a lot of times that's all that's needed is that aromatic aspect of using the essential oils that way.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
no, that's important too.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so if you have any questions about these things, please feel free to reach out and ask on our social media page, that kind of thing, so that other people can help get those answers as well if they have questions.
Yeah.
And don't forget to download these free charts at our website at schoolofessentria.com/en/free.
Thank you for tuning in to part 2 of our safety and dilution series.
We'll see you soon with the dermal dilutions.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for spending your time with us here at Vetiver Vibes. This episode was brought to you by Essentria, a leading online aromatherapy school. Don't forget to check out some of our free resources at www.schoolofessentria.com.
If you love this episode or you got a lot of value out of it, please make sure you share it with someone in your community who you think would enjoy it too. If you haven't already subscribed or reviewed the show yet, you can go on over to your preferred streaming platform and hit subscribe, then leave a review. This is the best way to help support us, and we appreciate it. Email us with a screenshot of your review, and we will send you a free guided meditation as our way to say thank you.
This podcast is for information purposes only. We are certified clinical aromatherapists and holistic health professionals. If you have a medication concern, please refer to your health team. Everyone's health is unique to themselves, so the topics and suggestions stated may or may not apply directly to you.